Alright, hello folks, Phil Gallagher here of ThrabenU for another Legacy stream. We are going to be playing a deck list that someone actually played against us on stream maybe a week and a half ago at this point. They went Dark Ritual into Crystalline Giant, and chat absolutely lost it. And Fine and Andy donated on the spot to play with that deck list. So, I have made some changes to the deck list. Which I'm going to talk about very briefly. So the original version of the deck list had a Bojuka Bog, a Cabal Pit, and 3 Wastelands, which I've just replaced with Snow-Covered Swamps. I think I value mana stability quite a bit for this deck, because I see myself wanting to hit 3 basic lands in a row basically every single game that I play with this deck list, and I think I want to minimally expose myself to Wasteland. So I've cut down the number of utility lands in the deck quite a bit. I've kept the Tabernacle because I think that's cute. Castle Lochtwain is an okay way to draw some cards in the late game. I've kept that. And I've kept the One of Urborg because it can turn our fetch lands into just swamps, and I think that's totally fine as well. But I've cut some of the other Flourish that were in the land slots. I've made no changes to the spells in the main deck. This is a list that's inspired by some of the things that I have played previously, and it's taken some of my suggestions as well as shoved Crystalline Giant into the archetype, which I think is a really cool idea. So when I played other iterations of this deck, I thought that Plague Engineer was going to be very, very good in the main deck of this. And like it started out as like a 2 or 3 of in the sideboard, and every time I played something that was like this, it was just like more and more Plague Engineers. So they've been promoted to a 4 of in the main deck. So our threat suite as far as creatures go is really Bob's, Engineers, and Crystalline Giants. And Murderous Rider is like also a threat, but like I'm really treating it more as a removal spell. For those of you not overly familiar with that one, Swift End lets you destroy target creature or planeswalker. We have Underworld Connection as well as a handful of planeswalkers as our way to sort of like get card advantage as the game goes long. And our sideboard is largely additional combo hate, with Sorcerous Spyglass being kind of like the most flexible thing here. I'm really worried about Oko, so when I changed the sideboard for this deck list, I removed, I think, 2 Null Rods that were here and replaced them with 2 Sorcerous Spyglasses, and I think I removed 1 other card to replace it with a second Elder spell. Relatively happy with the changes that I'm making conceptually, although I'm definitely doing something here that I shouldn't do. What's the advantage of connections over Phyrexian Arena? The ability to draw a card right away for an extra mana. Okay, so Wildfire. Looking at this, this says Enchanted Land has tap, pay 1 life, draw a card. So that means we can stop, right? Whereas with Phyrexian Arena, you don't stop. That card will kill you, whereas Underworld Connections will not kill you. So that's the difference here. In previous versions of this deck that I've played, not this exact one, but in previous mono black decks, I often found that between cards like Dismember, and sometimes I was running Ancient Tomb and Bob's, that like there was a very realistic chance that I would just kill myself. So Underworld Connections is sort of playing a slightly worse card that does not have a chance to kill you. Like, if you compare Dark Ritual Phyrexian Arena versus Dark Ritual Underworld Connections, like, you very obviously would want to Dark Ritual out Phyrexian Arena. But, like, let's say it's turn 8 and you're at 6 life. Can you play that Phyrexian Arena? Ooh. Can you play that Underworld Connections? Yes. So that's kind of the conceptual difference here. I think that's all I have to say. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into a league here. Hoping to kind of power through a stream today. I'm pretty tired. I just kind of randomly had one of those days where I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, and I've kind of been in a funk all day. Yeah, so if I'm a little bit out of it today, I do apologize for that. But I figure we can probably have a good time with this deck. Well, of course, the Hackbird. I do love it. New webcam is on the way, so that should be here next week. Tail end of next week, but next week. I'm not happy with how much I had to pay for a nice webcam, given pandemic circumstances, but it is what it is. We're playing against Mr. Sheep, who has a bird avatar, not a sheep avatar. It's a little disingenuous, really. Avenize in their deck or Riot. Our hand is fine. It's going to be a keep. We're going to want a third mana over the course of this, but we have a lot of really good draws. So, like, for example, Dark Ritual will let us play an early Planeswalker. The Thoughtseizes will let us sculpt the early game pretty easily. All right, great. Okay, so we are probably playing against some sort of Delver deck. My guess is Rug Delver. Ovinomancer. That's even better than an Ophiomancer. Sneak and Show with Daze is relatively rare. Not unprecedented, but rare. Oh man, we have the perfect sort of hand to play against them. We'll take the Force of Negation here and leave them with the Force of Will. So I'm going to assume that my opponent drew a blue card for the turn since they made no play. And I'm just going to jam this Planeswalker that I want to get countered into their Force of Will. Oh, cool. So it would make sense that they have something like Lightning Bolt instead as their draw. There we go. Because Underworld Connections can't kill you, but Phyrexian Arena can. That's okay. I don't mind re-answering the same questions. Yeah, especially in like the first 20 minutes of the stream when people are like filtering in. Ooh, they have pitched a Delver. Hola, ¿qué tal? I have bad news for you, friend. I have another one. And you have Wastelands. And this is part of the reason why I wanted to adjust the mana base to more just like straight up snow-covered swamps. I have to take the Crystalline Giant, right? It's required by law. I didn't even get to cast it. We are playing against Rug Delver. I'll probably board in 2 removal spells and call that good. If they end up playing Oko, I might make some adjustments to my sideboarding, but otherwise I don't really see myself changing much. What's bad versus Delver? Bob and Underworld connections are kind of the most questionable things. I think I'll board out the Underworld connections. Yeah, work is winding down for me. I now have all of my grading done. I'm kind of waiting on students to get the last sort of like sets of missing assignments and final exams in. And then Friday I have to submit grades. I won't be done at that point, like with work. I'm still going to have other things to do. But I'm definitely on the right track. The Hackberg, alternatively, like, I'm fine with Dark Confidant eating a Bolt, right? Like, Bolt is a super valuable card from their side of the table because it helps finish off my Planeswalkers, it kills Crystalline Giant, it kills Bob, it kills my Plague Engineers. So I'm fine with keeping my creature density high to tax their bolts a little bit harder. So I've been learning a lot of things while on quarantine. Today I learned that Taco Bell has a wiki. So if you're interested in learning about the history of the quesarito and how it came from the Chipotle secret menu, that sort of stuff is available there, and it cracked me up quite a bit. Like, I was looking up something, I forget what, as a joke, and I found that. How far down the internet rabbit hole did you go? Well, did you know you can also buy a boyfriend for $24.99 a month? That's something else that I learned. You get a set number of like text messages and voicemails and a handwritten letter. It's all sorts of weird. Him to Turok's still basically resolved there. I'm good with that. We're a little all in on this Bob now. So hopefully they don't have Bolt plus Red Land in their remaining stuff. Yeah, that was a pretty good turn one. Bob plus him is sweet. My opponent drew a non-instant sorcery card this time because it did flip Delver. So I'm going to sit here for a minute and think about blocking. I'm not going to block, but I want my opponent to be thinking that I'm okay with losing this Bob. In reality, I'm very much not. Alright. Let's find some removal. Plague Engineer is real sick. Those are fine as well. Now that I have double Lily, I think I'm okay with trading away a Bob for a Delver. Now that, like, Bob has replaced itself. I don't think my opponent will accept this trade. But we'll see. This is an interesting spot for my opponent, because, like, I wasn't willing to trade for the Delver last turn. And then I immediately offered a trade for the second Delver. So they may read that as I'm trying to sneak in 2 points of damage because, like, I don't think they'll block. Or they may read that as I'm just, like, offering a trade because I think the trade is favorable to me. Yeah, they know about one Lily, they don't know about the second Lily. Yeah, anyway, so regarding the random things that I found on the internet, my girlfriend and I were just hanging out talking about getting Taco Bell for dinner. And she was making jokes about not getting me food. And so I asked Google where to find a new girlfriend, and that started a string of very odd internet searches. Turns out if you're a guy, you're supposed to just go to the grocery store or a coffee shop to find a girlfriend, according to the great source that is WikiHow. But if you're a girl, you're supposed to go and like join some sort of activity. It's a very interesting WikiHow rabbit hole of bad advice if you want to go down it and get a laugh out of it. That's pretty good against me. I just hope their last card isn't like Spell Pierce. That's where I would run into some trouble. Or I guess Daze accomplishes the same thing. Or sorry, I guess I know their last card is Brainstorm, so I guess I'm hoping that they don't Brainstorm in 2 days. Yeah, see, that was my girlfriend's point, the Hackbert. Because if the guys are supposed to go to a grocery store to look for women, and the girls are supposed to go to, like, I don't know, a rugby club or something to find guys, and like they're not going to the same places. Nobody is ever going to have success in mating rituals. If the advice worked, you wouldn't need their help anymore. That's good. Yeah. Remember, chat, never take dating advice from the internet. Ever. Definitely don't take internet advice from streamers. Streamers are just out there to make money and entertain you with anecdotes. Don't trust them. Especially me. Don't trust me. If we're never supposed to follow advice from the internet, but the streamer is giving us the advice that says don't follow advice from the internet, what are we supposed to do? Oko, no, not Oko. Alright. I would like my Lily to die. Nope. Lily did not die. Alright, Bob. Ashiok? What does that do? Nothing? Seems like nothing. Game's gonna get weird. Game's gonna get weird. So I blow up that Delver. I plus this Lily, and I'll be willing to discard a land. Opponent has discarded a Ponder. I think I like have to let my Bob live. So here's, I think, the plan. I think the plan is opponent attacks me with food, putting me to 1. Bob flips a land. I somehow don't die and kill my opponent. Alright, well, that's pretty good. I like the part where my opponent showboated and revealed extra information. So I should probably have a couple more answers to Oko in here of some nature. So like right now, the Murderous Riders are my answers to Oko, and that's all I have. If I rely on Planeswalkers for card advantage, I could trim Bobs. Like, I could trim Bobs and play 2 Sorcerous Spyglass as just something that answers Oko. I think I like that. And again, apologies that the webcam is down. It fried sometime between Monday night and Tuesday morning. So, a new one is on the way and will be here next week. Yeah, so Phyrexian Arena doesn't kill you. Or sorry, Phyrexian Arena can kill you, whereas Underworld Connections cannot kill you. Phyrexian Arena is definitely better in the early game, whereas Underworld Connections is a bit better in the mid to late game. I am not sure if I am supposed to Dark Ritual out double Thoughtseize on turn 1. I don't think I'm going to do that. My opponent mulligans once or twice, maybe we'll talk, but I think I'd rather have Dark Ritual for turn 2 than I can Dark Ritual Thoughtseize into Plague Engineer. I think that's way better. Alright, we're just going to take the days here. My opponent will go Trop Delver Pass, and then I'll go Dark Ritual Thoughtseize, Plague Engineer next turn. We'll name Wizard, and then we can trade with the Hooting Mandrills a little bit later on. Sure, that's fine. I do think it is a little bit strange that my opponent didn't just jam the Delver onto the board. I guess they're valuing their Sylvan Library very, very highly. I didn't say it, you said it. So these are both wizards, right? So that means my Plague Engineer is going to be very good. So we'll take a Hooting Mandrills and just leave them with all of that. So my opponent needs Oko. Oko would be the thing that would warp this game the most in my opponent's favor. Oh wow, that's very aggressive. Lightning Bolt's fine for my opponent, but still just like very awkward while Liliana Last Hope is in play. The other Hooting Mandrills that my opponent has is okay. The creatures aren't great. If they can answer my board a bit, then counterspells become pretty darn good. Just so I can't like slam another 3-mana card that's very relevant. Something like a True Name would also be very good. Yeah. I think I need to just spike an out to this Oko, rather than like try to attack it. My opponent just turns the food into a creature. That kind of plays into the line that I was doing in leaving up Fatal Push. If they do an exchange for food for Plague Engineer, that's much more awkward for me. But I can maybe do something about that. Like kill the Plague Engineer, then get it back with Lily or something like that. I also didn't realize it, but my opponent's also playing quite slowly. I'm up about 9 minutes on clock. Castle Lochtwain, huh? So I can get exactly one activation out of that. That should get me like a fatal push. What will my opponent do with their Oko on their turn? Probably just make a food, and then swap on the following turn. I don't see them giving me Hooting Mandrills, and I don't see them giving me Dreadhorde Arcanist. Yeah, one of the podcasts I was listening to had an anecdote the other day about like someone who won an event with Oko, like, or maybe it was even my podcast. I don't know. Like things blur together at this point. Yeah, it might have been Brian telling me this story about how someone who won like a vintage event with Oko in their deck had never used the exchange ability in an entire event. Yeah, recording the podcast is a lot of fun. I've been enjoying that a lot. We ramble on a little bit, and we're not always 100% focused, but it's fun. Another one of those, eh? Let's start here and see if this resolves. We're playing it around a Pierce. Force Pitch Delver. Okay. Now do I just attack them? Because I think my opponent is close to 100% to just like food swap for Plague Engineer. So if I move Plague Engineer to the graveyard, I can then get it back with my Lily on a minus. And then I also get value off my Lily. It's definitely a weird line. Okay. So now I instead offer them the position where they can plus on their food and kill my Lily. But I keep my Plague Engineer around for another turn on my side of the battlefield. Well, actually, it's not true, right? Because I can plus here, then I'll take 5. Yeah, alright. We'll continue to play this very awkward game. Yeah, so this is the sort of gameplay that I absolutely hate, and that I was really worried about returning, is where, like, you're playing some fair deck, and your opponent just plays an Oko, and it takes over the entire game, and it's the only spell they really have to cast. And that's exactly what has happened this game. Hey, Julian, and welcome! We're in a pinch here to everyone who is joining in. We're playing against Rug Delver in Game 3 here. We're a touch late to actually answering this Oko, but it looks like we have the ability to do it now. So hopefully we kill the Oko, we kill the Delver. Nope, opponent has it all. We'll still take out the Delver, but then I'm basically dead. Like, I kind of think my opponent should just, like, Oko plus on their Dreadheart Arcanist and nug me for 9. Yeah, for everyone who's tuning in from Julian's stream, if you will take a look at the Cardboard Live extension, you can see the entire deck list there. We are playing a mono-black control deck that also features Crystalline Giant. We're obviously in very, very poor shape. Prior to our opponent having the Oko, we were in very good shape, but that is what it is. So I'm maybe not dead yet, but it feels like we're pretty dead. I could have taken 1 less damage by Dark Ritualing prior to. I'm going to let them draw cards. I'm going to hope to, I guess, Fatal push a Food or an Arcanist. Takes 7. Oh yeah, deck is definitely sweet. The stream will be a lot of fun. Very, very sure of that. That sucks. And I have to kill this so that we don't just immediately get Bolt flashbacked. So killing the Arcanist and the Food both save 3 damage this turn. But unfortunately, we are still dead. So flashing the deck list on screen for everyone who tuned in late, this is what we are working with. It is a donation deck list. We have a Planeswalker suite as well as some cool things to ramp out quickly. Plague Engineer as removal, Crystalline Giant as this card is really fun and actually surprisingly good. Yeah, even if we live one turn though, I think we have no outs to that many creatures plus Oko. And like that's why I'm super frustrated about nothing. I'm not going to go on a long ban rant, but I'm super frustrated that more action was not taken in the last banning, because like Oko Mush was just absolutely miserable, and I think the gameplay in the companion metagame was very, very good, even if like win rates of decks were super warped and deck building was stupid. Like the gameplay, the actual games of Magic themselves were very fun, and now I just really fear that we're going to return to like playing against Oko at almost every round. And if you're trying to like do something fun, or if you're trying to play something that can't particularly answer Oko well that's also fair, your deck's just invalidated. Hey Rogue Judge, welcome. And thank you very much for your support. Let's tick that sub goal up a little bit, shall we? We've got a fine to good hand. Oh man, just like play an elf. I would enjoy it if you played an elf. Wooded Foothills Pass makes me think that we're playing against like Rug Delver again. So rather than ram out my Lily on one, I'm going to Thoughtseize and try to get a little more information first. Enchantress, huh? I am going to take your Argothian Enchantress. And I think this game is probably over now. I probably Lily ult fast enough that the zombies can just win the game. Oh, Lily Veil, Lily Last Hope. My webcam is broken, if that's what you mean. I'm going to play towards ending the game sooner rather than disrupting my opponent, because if my opponent top decks an Enchantress effect and puts it into play, or Sterling Groves and tutors for one, the Liliana of the Veil is actually going to be working against me quite a bit. Grizzle Brandon, it just kind of fried. Got like a big flash of light and it disappeared. Well, not disappeared. Yeah, I'm fine with this exchange as well. I thought they were going to sandbag that Oblivion Ring for longer, but I was wrong. We're not going to play the Tabernacle here. Alright, so they are going to Sterling Grove for an Enchantress effect here. I'm fine with that. Yeah, we will very, very gladly edict that away. Or will we? I could just Murderous Rider it, and then continue to tick my Lily up. And then I just like Lily Ultimate in 2 more turns, give her the Enchantress's Presence, and I'm good to go. Hmm. Actually quite happy with that draw. I don't think I really need more land, so I'll probably Lily plus discard my land and play this Ashiok here. Ashiok will shut off Green Sun. My opponent also let their Elephant Grass go. I guess before anything else, let's attack with Bob. Vob, almost everything that I play on this channel is a donation deck list. So I very rarely play decks that I myself choose on this channel. I play things that the people want to see. Alright, I am at 9 life off my Bob. So I don't think my Underworld Connections is actually going to see play this game, so I'm just going to go ahead and discard that here. Good thing I have this Ashiok in play. Otherwise, I just died. It's a very painful Bob. Like, holy crap. This is not a well done interface. Alright, so how do I split this? Essentially, Enchantress's Presence is the only card that really does anything. I guess the Helm of Obedience also gives them a backdoor kill. If I put Helm and Oblivion Ring here, I also get back another Planeswalker. So the top pile right now would leave them with Rest in Peace as a way to beat me. I could just like split basically their mana versus their permanents that matter. Let's do something like this. Yeah, and they've chosen to keep their mana, meaning that I get back a Lily here. We're playing a Murderous Rider so that we can offset the life loss of Bob. I'm probably willing to kill my own Bob next turn. Yeah, it's time for Bob to go. He's done work. I can't like technically die even to Destiny Spinner at this point. I'll just kill my opponent with a couple of Murderous Rider swings. I could have done things very differently this turn. Like, I could have just played another Murderous Rider, gotten a faster clock in play, kept the Bob around, killed my opponent in 2 turns. But I think we're pretty done here if I have 3 Planeswalkers in play. Okay. We're not going to have a lot of things that really interact terribly well with our opponent, and we're going to have a decent number of things that I'm going to want to at least think about boarding out. So as far as our removal goes, these can hit Argothian Enchantress. These hit Destiny Spinner. These hit Destiny Spinner. These kill either. This does not kill anything and is kind of awkward. These are the things that I can think about boarding in. How worried are you about Leyline of Sanctity? Literally 0. Fisherman Pants, thank you very much for following. So I think this is going to go out. I don't see myself wanting all of these fatal pushes. I may keep some around for Destiny Spinner, but like Destiny Spinner should be answerable via Edict Effects and Murderous Riders as well. So maybe we'll do something like junk 2 of these. Sorcerous Spyglass is probably pretty okay. In that stopping Sterling Grove from tutoring for answers to our specific threats is fine. We may end up just doing something that looks kind of like this. Yeah, and of course, stopping helm combo is something that it does as well. We'll keep this hand. We go Thoughtseize, attempt to keep the Enchantress effect that has made their opening hand keepable, and then I'll play a Bob. Oof, opponent on a mulligan to 5 here. That is going to be very rough after this Thoughtseize. Their hand is good. I can answer their Argothian Enchantress via Plague Engineer. And I can answer Destiny Spinner via Murderous Rider, so I think I'm actually just going to take the Enchantress's presence here. This lets my opponent curve out a little bit better, but I think I'm willing to give them 1 or 2 draws. That's just like them being back at 7 cards, and then I think I will just bury them in creatures. All right, yeah, that's all as expected here. Well, those are both humans. All right, so we revealed another Bob. So we'll kill Setessan Champion next turn. And I can also have this as like a blocker. The Destiny Spinner is kind of awkward in that I need to answer it before I answer the Setessan Champion in all likelihood. Maybe not. Oh, so this is going to put me up to 6 mana. So I'll probably just Murderous Rider, kill this. I would gladly trade Bob for Destiny Spinner. And do I care if this Lily dies? I don't think I care if this Lily dies. But it's pretty free to hold back. Yeah, it's pretty free to hold back. There's worlds where my opponent ends up, like, animating an enchantment or something. That's annoying. So I need to be thinking about playing my Murderous Rider. To protect my life total. Like, Destiny Spinner is very real and can pivot a game quickly. But I don't think I'm going to do it this turn. I think I'm going to Lily plus discard my Underworld connections and see what my opponent has to discard. Ooh, nothing. They are just going to Enlighten Tutor. That's fine. Another Enchantress's Presence. Okay. Red Hot, thank you very much for your continued support. Very much appreciated. I'm also very happy that my opponent killed my Bob. I will play another, but that's mostly for my own clock. I'm pretty priced into casting my Murderous Rider for my own lifelink now, and there's even worlds where I have to kill my own Bob using one of my cards. We can also high roll and get lifelink on Crystalline Giant, which would be pretty hot. Tabernacle's a great way to kill my Bob as well. What do we get? Vigilance. So we can keep our Bob alive, discard this Thoughtseize, play our lifelinker, and pass the turn. And while my opponent does their turn, let's get this updated. A solitary confinement is an annoyance. So for anyone not super familiar with this, you skip your draw step, you have Shroud, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. So this game will go long. And our opponent has hit very well here. Alright, I can't do that. I can still tick up and just work towards the worlds where that's gone. I can play towards getting a third Plague Engineer. And then that kills the Destiny Spinners. No, we're gonna get Ashiok and deck them. That's how I'm planning on winning this game. I'm thinking about whether or not I want to kill my own Bob here. I think I do. Our opponent just finds the Helm. That's super unfortunate. but they usually only have one of those, so I'm not super worried about it in the immediate future. Opponent could also Emrakul me, though. Who knows? I don't even think that card was very threatening. Alright, that was unfortunate. Don't do that. Don't reveal your hand to show me you still had all these. That's extra information. Like, now I know you have multiple Setessan champions in your deck. And I will probably adjust my sideboarding to have more spot removal accordingly. So now that I know a little bit more information about their deck, and I know that I want more spot removal to deal with Setessan Champion, I don't think I'm going to try to stop the Leyline Helm portion of the deck with Sorcerer's Spyglass. Absolutely keep. What we do is more interesting. I think we're supposed to bob on one to try to have 2 looks at a land for turn 2. So that I can just him on turn 2. Dark Ritual on turn 2 is also fine, but we have the land as well. I think I just want to him here. Maybe that's not true. I think it's true. Alright, we got a Rest in Peace. My opponent certainly didn't keep their hand on the strength of Rest in Peace. Hopefully my opponent just plays out like a Setessan Champion or an Enchantress effect here and I get to Edict it. That's what we didn't want to see. One, two, three, four, five, six. Double Crystalline Giant, YOLO. Lily Veil. It doesn't seem great to show my Lily Veil too early. Alright, we have Trample and Death Touch. We're swinging for at least 8 next turn, potentially 10. My opponent has no white mana yet for things like Oblivion Ring. We have multiple removal spells for creatures. Lifelink, Trample. Ooh, we got a +1/+1 counter on this one. GG's. Crystalline Giant's pretty interesting in this deck. in that the earlier we play it, the better it is. But we also have these other really powerful things that we like to do when we cast Dark Ritual. I know what I'm about to say is going to sound absurd, but I wish we had more Dark Rituals. This card is so good in this deck where the ability to power out the early Planeswalkers is very, very strong. And as well as just like powering out early Bobs and Crystalline Giants, or like a 2-drop back with Thoughtseize is all really, really strong. Underworld Connections has been our worst card so far in these last 2 rounds. We've only discarded it off of Lily thus far. Is this lands, KCC? No, recently a green mid-range pile. Before that, some depths. Regardless, I'm going to keep this hand. Like, we have push for an early creature, then we have, like, Bob, him, Lily. We have a lot of tools here. Yeah, the webcam committed seppuku, unfortunately. Flash of brilliant white light, and it died. Der Kartenladen, thank you very much for following. I appreciate the support. For everyone just tuning in, hello, I'm Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU. Today we are playing a mono-black control list. Oh, I've played a lot of games versus Casey. I have enjoyed them greatly. Ooh, Spirit Guide into Reclaimer. Wow, this is really turbo depths. Go fast. We could die next turn. If opponent has a Dark Depths in hand. Alright, it will take another turn cycle. So my opponent will probably tap 2 lands. So this is interesting. If they get rid of the Urborg, then they don't have enough mana to activate. They would need another land. And I can him both of their cards right now. Another question is, do they actually have an Ancient Tomb in their deck? Because that could do some weird things, I guess. So I think they absolutely rotate the Urborg into the depths and hope to rip a mana source. Alright, we got a little lucky there. So maybe we can catch a break. They could also just have a Spirit Guide and make me look like a fool. I wish I had a removal spell for this. I do not. Well, you probably figured out what I meant. A removal spell for this that wasn't the Lily of the Veil. Because, like, using the Lily here really sucks when I want that to answer the Merit Lodge token. Alright. They had another Spirit Guide. So we are dead to that. Alright. Spyglass seems great. Can Lost Legacy name lands? Nope. Triumph is fine. Surgical Extraction is maybe good enough alongside our discard. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. So I don't know that I'm actually going to bring these in. I'm going to leave these over here for now. So let's go Underworld Connections out. I think Murderous Rider is probably too slow to answer the creatures that I care about. We're not really a Pox deck, is my answer to that. I don't know what the last card I'm supposed to board out is. I don't know. Like, Plague Engineer on Vampire is pretty good. I definitely want all of these cards. Maybe let's just trim a Crystalline Giant. Our hand isn't necessarily overly impressive here, but like we have two different strong turn 2 plays depending on how my opponent opens up. We're going to try to get their Urborg or Vampire Hexmage here. Well, ain't that awkward. He absolutely has to call me on just passing with mana up there. Unfortunately, I only get to make one play this turn. I think the smart play is Plague Engineer on Vampire Hexmage. Although, I don't know, we've already seen 2 of those, so maybe I'm supposed to just name... I think I'm just supposed to name Vampire with this. Alright, so my opponent gets to shut off one of my Planeswalkers there. And we'll stop that with Sorcerer Spyglass. Actually, we might just stop the Thespian stage itself, because I have Vampire answered for Vampire Hexmage, and like we'll play this first, but yeah, we'll name Thespian stage then. I think I just want to start assembling a death machine, rather than starting to draw cards with Bob. Alright, we got a +1/+1 counter there. That makes the Elvish Reclaimer attacks bad. And I'm not going to offer Plague Engineer for Elvish Reclaimer. I just don't think I have a strong need to do that. Hymn to Turok plus Bob is pretty good. I'd probably attack with Plague Engineer this turn, though. Like, give my opponent the opportunity to trade it for Reclaimer. Or Cabal Pit. Yeah, I think I'm good with that. But I'm going to Hymn first. And just, like, make sure there's nothing funky happening. I don't think there is. Yeah, they just drew a forest. So if I attack with Crystalline Giant, my opponent could shrink it and then block with Elvish Reclaimer and take it out for free? Well, not for free. It would still cost them the Cabal Pit. But I would be good with that because I'd still have Plague Engineer. I don't know what sort of utility lands my opponent is going to have at this point. Okay, they're just taking a land that gives them a redraw. That's fine and good. I don't think I want to activate my castle this turn. I might now. That I just, like, double-bricked. Trample. I'm sort of interested in what they have to get at this point. I don't know if they're just, like, thinning to play towards the 2/0 Vampire Hexmage that remains. Alright, they're playing towards drawing an Abrupt Decay for Sorcerer Spyglass now. But they've lost a green source to do that. Well, there's a green source again, but it's a very awkward green source. Thoughtseize, my Thoughtseize, deal. I'm not going to fetch. Gives me more of a life buffer with Bob. Very happy with Ashiok as a draw. Very, very happy. Ooh, I am death touching and trampling. That is a classic combo. Yeah, the lifelink counter to go above 20 would be cool. I think my opponent needs to get a green source here. We did not take out a Hex Mage in taking that play, but that's fine. We have shrunk the Elvish Reclaimer down to a smaller size, meaning that my Bob gets to attack again. That's definitely relevant this game. I think I'm just going to submit the way that I did previously. Maybe the games go on long enough that Murderous Rider is actually fine, just as another thing to kill Elvish Reclaimer or Bobs or whatever. I'm going to think about that for a second. I think Crystalline Giant is better than Murderous Rider, but I think it's close. I'm going to keep this one and hope to draw a land in 2 draws. This has all of the right tools. Absolutely everything that I want. It's possible that I stumble and die, and like I accept that if it happens, but I get Fatal Push to disrupt like a turn 1 Reclaimer or something like that, and I just have like every single piece of interaction that I could possibly want. We hit a land. Well, I'm not gonna lie, I was not expecting that. If I was expecting that, we could have gone just land pass, held up Lily on his Triumph, but I don't think I ever would have like taken that line in a million years. All right, GG's. No, Tabernacle does not kill the token. Part of that's my fault, right? Like, I was talking to chat and like reading stuff, and I think I just passed the turn without playing my Thoughtseize on turn 1. So like that's partially my fault that happened. So I maybe actually punted that game. Yeah, GG's. I was not expecting that sequence of events there at the end, as I'm sure you figured out. I had an edict in hand. But that was rough. Alright, we're going to be playing against the Search Stompy deck? Yeah, we're going to play against the Search Stompy deck. Thalia's fine. Slightly awkward for me. We're just going to fetch so we don't get Aven Mind censored and pass the turn. How do I want to do this? I think I want to push that. And then just him my opponent. And this is why I didn't just like kill the Thalia on my turn or my opponent's upkeep or something, was so that I could potentially get something juicier in the second main phase. Oh, nice. We took out a Wasteland, which would have gotten my Urborg. Unless my opponent has something to do for 3-ish mana on their turn, they should have bounced their Thalia there. So the card that's in their hand is very potentially a human. Or they're getting a little greedy with Winds of Abandon. My hand is very good, so I don't know that I want to play Lily of the Veil if I suspect that their card might be bad. So I think I'm going to play Lily Last Hope instead. So we're not going to need to Sorcerer's Spyglass anything. I can pretty much guarantee that. Lily's Triumph is going to be good, and that's probably the only thing that we're going to board in. Our Planeswalkers are going to be awkward against Suppression Field, but I don't think we get to do much about that. This is also probably more awkward against Suppression Field than the Planeswalkers, so I think I'm going to go with this. I think my opponent was playing Eldrazi in one of their previous iterations, but I don't know exactly what it looks like now. So you're asking me if I'll keep a hand with turn 1 Dark Ritual into Crystalline Giant. Yes, I will. We'll definitely eat it to a turn 1 Suppression Field, though, because like this is a fetch land. But I don't necessarily think that turn 1 suppression field is like the best thing to do against me anyway, so I don't know. We'll see. Fuck. Alright, GG. I'll find an Urborg and turn it into a mana-producing land. Land? Land! I am a skilled magician. Alright, let's get the hexproof counter on this first roll. Trample counter's not super relevant in this matchup. Ooh, inside information. My opponent is also on the giant plan. Oof. My opponent can very gladly wasteland my polluted delta if that's something that they want to do. Yeah, my opponent's hand was definitely medium, but if the Council's Judgment was in the opening hand, and they had something like Ancient Tomb, Plains, Spyglass, Council Judgment, Wasteland, or something like that, I think that's totally fine. +1/+1 counter would be clutch. Gotta call them. You have to call them like that, or they don't happen. Alright, so I need one of my permanents to leave play so that I can Fatal Push their Crystalline Giant. Or I need to draw a land so I can Liliana's Triumphant. This is peak Legacy right here. Alright, theirs also has First Strike, which I don't care about yet. Oh, yeah, now I'm flying. Great. Alright, so now they get 2 chances to roll flying this turn to block me. Alright, they did not hit flying, so they're dead on board. Yeah, I was really excited about this card when the set was spoiled, and I wasn't exaggerating my excitement for this card. I think it like legitimately will see legacy play. I think the card is good. Like when you can play it on turn 1 or turn 2, it's very good as a standalone threat. You have to have something like Chalice or a whole bunch of bodies to back it up. Like you want your opponent to be expending resources in other ways than dealing with it. Like you want to give it time to snowball out of control. I will probably never play this card in paper if I'm being totally honest. Like it's very clearly a card that works better on like Magic Online or Arena. Um, I would never play this card in paper. I don't think. Like unless it was in like a clearly tier 1 strategy that was up my alley, then I would. But it would be a nuisance. I will snap off the turn 1 Lily. Yeah, Dr. Bill, hopefully in the next couple of months, like, we get to the point where I can actually come out to Charlotte again, and it's, like, safe and wise to do so. Good game. Well played. MTG Goldfish. Zugengyu. Who has played Delver recently. And also some graveyard stuff before that, but I'm gonna guess that my opponent's on Delver. Yeah, I mean, we all know Grizzlebrand is a bad Magic card, right? That's why it's allowed to exist in Legacy. Clearly not an atrocity. Since I saw so few cards from my opponents there, and by so few I mean literally 0, I'm just going to board in 2 removal spells and call that good enough. Yeah, if I was going to play Crystalline Giant in paper, I would have 4 matching sets of tokens. And 4 little matching bags for each, like 1 for each Crystalline Giant. Because you can't just have 1 set of tokens, right? You theoretically need 4. Yeah, I don't think Underworld Connection should be in the deck. Like, I'll talk about some potential changes to the deck after this. But, like, obviously keep in mind that our sample size is very small in terms of, like, data collection. Alright, so we are playing against Infect. Yep. Yep. I like the part where both of my spells resolved. That was a good part. I think I will just fire off another removal spell directly into this thing. This one gets around some of the Vines of Ashwood type stuff, but is soft to counter magic. It's also soft to Dryad Arbor, but I've stopped playing under the assumption that Infect players will have Dryad Arbor in their lists. Viridian Corruptor? Green Sun? What are we looking at here? Oko? Man, fuck Oko. Good thing I have an answer to it in hand. Now will opponent just, like, elk this? Yeah. I would like to say this is one of the games where I had it all, and I would just like to recognize that. Like, my opening hand had Acceleration, a great threat that drew me extra cards, 2 removal spells, and an answer to this Oko, like, by the time all of this stuff happened. Nexus? Blink Moth. This Tabernacle is interesting but awkward here. And I think I'm just going to hold back. I would like to not endanger my Plague Engineer in combat. So we're going to do this and force my opponent to use a pump spell here. Nice. My mana situation's quite awkward. In that I really want this to be a mana producing land, and I'm not comfortable playing this when I'm like playing multiple creatures to the board and still have spells to cast. Blighted Agent is like a rogue? Human rogue? Human rogue. That's obligatory. It's just awkward if they have the follow-up Blighted Agent. JK. So I don't even think I play the other Blighted Agent, or sorry, the other Plague Engineer this turn. I think I save that until after they play a creature. I think I just get Crystalline Giant going. And I try to like make this thing spiral out of control. Flying is actually very good for if Plague Engineer dies. And our opponent has conceded the match there. meaning that we go 60% with mono black control. Gare Legacy Hype, as well as Jose Breneres, and a string of numbers. Thank you all for following. I hope you have enjoyed this Legacy content. So let's talk deck building. Crystalline Giant was pretty good today. Kind of as expected. If it got to stick around for 2 or 3 turns, it snowballs out of control as far as like a fair creature goes. It does not snowball out of control quite as quickly as something like Dreadhorde Arcanist does, in that like that thing makes it around the cycle once, and it's just insane. This is a bit more of a slow build-up, but considering that you get to play Crystalline Giant in mana acceleration shells, I think that's okay. Like, this is a very good card in a colorless deck, like Mox Diamond, Chrome Mox, Dark Rituals sort of deck. I expect to see this card around now that like companions aren't absolutely everywhere. Worst card in the deck was Underworld Connections in this league. So against the controlling decks right now, they actually are Oko focused, and they can just deal with your Underworld Connections by not removing it, just by creating some Elks and pressuring your life total. Considering that like our own Bobs and like some of our fetch lands and stuff are also pressuring our life total, I don't think this is reasonable. I would like to just play 2 more Murderous Rider, if I'm being completely honest, and just have more main deck outs to Oko. Murderous Rider was pretty good throughout this league. So I would play 2 Murderous Rider over this, and then I'd be pretty happy with the main deck. I don't know how I feel about the sideboard. The sideboard was something that I threw together based on the list that was submitted to me, but I don't know that I have the right set of spells. So like there were originally 2 Null Rods here and 1 other random card that I forgot over these 3 cards, and I don't think the Null Rods are necessary anymore, and I wanted more Oko hate. It's possible that if I play some Murderous Riders in the main deck, I don't really need the Sorcerous Spyglass anymore. But like, I really just want to respect Oko because his deck folds so hard to it. And like, I expect Oko to be everywhere. We didn't just like play against Mono Yori and Snow this league, which I'm very thankful for. I was really worried that like Oko was going to be everywhere. We admittedly did play against it in multiple rounds, but it wasn't just like dedicated, like I am an Oko deck, Oko, Astrolabe, Yorion, blah, 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 blah. We didn't run into too much of that sort of thing. So that's pretty cool. The Tabernacle didn't necessarily do some cool things, but as a pseudo board wipe, it's pretty good. The original deck list I got had a 1 of Dead of Winter as a true sweeper, but I cut that because when the games go long, your Crystalline Giants are good, and your Dead of Winters are also good, but they're not both good at the same time. So I eliminated that 1 of there. I don't know if the Tabernacle is actually good enough to be in the deck. I think it's interesting design space to explore. Alucartes, at the same time though, I was just talking about how my life total is under a lot of pressure, right? So like the castle pressures our life total, our Bobs do, our fetch lands do, our opponent's creatures do. Underworld Connections in the current build does as well, even though like we didn't cast that card once this entire league. So I don't know if it's correct to be playing Toxic Deluge. It's probably an okay sideboard option, and like having access to a true sweeper is probably fine. Those are kind of my thoughts about the deck list as is. We didn't cast Lost Legacy this league, but if we play against something like Sneak and Show, like having access to that and just being able to like just deal with like Show and Tell in particular is really, really, really strong. So I think I'm fine with that being in the deck list. Is this going to be the most competitive thing in the world? No, absolutely not. And we knew that going in. But is this deck going to be really fun and also like viable in that you can like expect to win games a decent percentage of the time? Yes, absolutely. And I would have 100% on this back. Do you think this deck wants Mishra's Factory? I don't think so. Let me explain why. So let's contrast this deck with Pox for a minute. Pox does small amounts of chip damage over time, mostly with things like Mishra's Factory and Cursed Scroll. Whereas what this deck conceptually is trying to do is play out a major threat and ride it to victory. So most of the time this deck is looking to go like Dark Ritual into one of the 23 drops that are here and win the game with that. Like, that's the game plan. And so the chip damage off Mishra's Factory does not contribute to winning the game with, like, a lot of these Planeswalkers, right? So I don't necessarily think you need to make yourself more vulnerable to Wasteland to fit in some chip damage. Admittedly, you could use them defensively to protect your Planeswalkers and, like, treat it as a 3-mana blocker, or not 3 mana, a 3 toughness blocker. And, like, maybe that's okay. But if you look at the amount of double black symbols that we have in this deck, it's actually pretty high. So I don't know that you get to fit those in. Like, they certainly would not be free. They would make the mana of this deck worse. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. So today is Wednesday. I will actually be back Thursday night as well. I think at the regularly scheduled time of sort of like the early evening after I eat dinner. Just wanted to fit in a stream today before I got too tired. Kind of had a night where I just like woke up at 4:30 in the morning and was largely awake. So I hope you all enjoyed it. I'm going to turn you all over to D'Amato EXP momentarily, who is presumably doing some Storm. Yeah, Nathan, I'm just finishing up, so if you want to watch the VOD, it is available to you now. Folks, if you're not already following, please consider following, and if you really want to do something to support the channel, consider subscribing to get some of my sweet emotes, or doing something like a donation deck list, and let's show off the cool things that can exist in this post-companion world. Well, it's not quite a post-companion world, but, you know, the post-companion utter dominance world. Have a great rest of the day, folks. Invalid username. D'Amato EXP. There we go.